Depending on the day that you're watching this video, it may or may not be Valentine's Day. To celebrate such an event as a single loner is rather challenging, so I've decided that I will instead acknowledge one of the nicest couples in science, the Curies. There are multiple scientific couples in the Curie family, but today I'm going to be focusing on Marie and Pierre Curie. I'd like to kindly ask you to consider liking this video if you do enjoy it, and subscribe as I make this sort of content regularly. In particular order, I'm going to start with Marie Curie. Maria Salomina Sklodowska was born in what is now called Warsaw, Poland, that was then part of the Russian Empire, on the 7th of November 1867. She was born to two teachers, Bronislawa and Władysław Sklodowska, and was the youngest of 5 children. I'm going to apologise in advance for my pronunciation because, as you can tell, my Polish knowledge is really lacking, so my apologies. Marie Curie was the youngest of 5 children, and her father lectured in maths and physics, which likely influenced her to pursue these subjects. Her mother was the headmistress at a prestigious all-girls school. At the age of 11, everything changed for Curie, with her mother succumbing to tuberculosis. One of her sisters, Zofia, passed away 2 years prior after contracting typhus. Things continued to be tough for some time as Curie's father lost his job around the same time of her mother's passing. All of this tragedy meant that Curie formed a close bond with her older sisters, particularly Bronia, with whom she had made a pact that educationally they would always support one another. Curie grew up in a partially religious environment, her father being an atheist and her mother a devout Catholic. All of the loss in her life led to her losing faith, leading her to describe herself as agnostic. In order to pursue her education, Curie was forced to leave Poland, which forbid any woman from going to university. Her father was keen for her to go, and aligning with the pact that she had made with her sister, Curie moved to Paris, where she studied at the city's namesake university, Sorbonne University of Paris. Here she read physics and maths, obtaining a master's in physics in 1893 and a master's in maths the following year. Now on to Marie's future husband, Pierre. Pierre Curie was a French chemist and physicist, born in the capital of Paris on the 15th of May, 1859. His parents were Eugène and Sophie Claire Curie, the former of whom was a medical practitioner. He had a brother called Jacques, who he worked on later in life on bioelectricity. Curie's education consisted of homeschooling, which, given his father's background, was likely very informative from a scientific perspective. His love for maths was present early on in his education. Like Marie, Pierre went to Sorbonne for his university education, where he studied physics, obtaining a license in this in 1878. Alongside his brother Jacques, Curie conducted many experiments through which the two discovered bioelectricity in 1880. 3 years later, Curie left Sorbonne for the faculty of École supérieure de physique et de chimie industrielle, which in English means Industrial Physics and Chemistry Higher Educational Institution. I really hope that my French GCSE was put to good use, but somehow I doubt it. Here, Curie began to study magnetism, which he did a PhD thesis on, discovering the transitions of the 3 types of magnetism. He constructed a torsion balance, which, due to his influence, is now called a Curie balance. During the same period, he penned Curie's law, which details the inverse proportion of magnetic coefficients of attraction of paramagnetic bodies at absolute temperature. At this point, Curie lacked sufficient evidence and explanation, and he was only able to defend his thesis in 1895, following an explanation by Paul Langevin. It was in 1894 that Marie and Pierre's paths crossed, when the two were introduced by mutual friend and physicist Józef Wierzchowski. The pair instantly felt a spark, with Pierre finding Marie fascinating and being completely smitten by her. Marie felt similarly and was also inspired by his superior experience. Marie is quoted as saying that Pierre inspired confidence within her. After some time, Pierre simply could not hold back his feelings, writing Marie a letter in which he admitted to all of his deepest thoughts and wishes for them. He was clearly keen, as within the year he proposed to Marie, who planned to return to Poland for university and as such initially refused his proposal. When those plans failed, once again due to Polish law, Marie accepted his proposal, and the couple remained in Paris and got married in a small ceremony on the 26th of July, 1895. Marie rather famously wore a dress that doubled as a lab coat for her wedding, which, given their jobs, is rather fitting. For their honeymoon, they went on a nice bike ride around the French countryside. The couple works alongside each other for most of their married life, their most famous project being their look into radioactivity along the French physicist Antoine-Henri Becquerel. The Curies discovered the principles of radioactivity following Marie's work with uranium, that was at that point the only known radioactive element. Specifically, Marie looked at the rocks believed to contain the element, and through this study found that the radioactivity readings of said rock samples were about 3 times higher than that of typical uranium. Becquerel was also working with uranium, but it was instead exposing uranium slats to sunlight, which gave him some unexpected observations. Thanks to a cloudy day, Becquerel's suspicion that luminescence may affect the salt and unknown element was proven true. This revelation aided the Curies greatly. During this time, Marie and Pierre welcomed their first of 2 daughters, Irene, on the 12th of September 1897. Marie was frequently seen in the lab and was keen to undertake a doctoral degree, so was simultaneously looking for a subject. Once the trio met and discussed their findings, research began. Marie used one of Pierre's apparatus, an electrometer, to measure weak electrical currents in the uranium rays. Curie determined after only a few days that thorium and uranium gave off the same rays and that electrical compounds did not differ per se in their strength of radiation, and that it was rather the potency of uranium or thorium that varied this reading. The conclusion drawn from this was that it was not the arrangement of the atoms in the molecule that made the difference. Rather, it was the interior of the atom itself that made a difference. She repeated this experiment with every element known in the periodic table at the time, and her findings were entirely consistent. Pierre and Marie found 2 new metals previously unknown to humankind, and named the new elements polonium and radium. They found these elements from extractions of pitch blende by observing properties and radiation readings. They proposed their findings on Boxing Day 1898. Following much arduous work, Marie proposed her doctoral thesis in June 1903, when she proved that the atomic mass of radium was 225. Her revolutionary findings were rewarded with a doctoral degree in physics. Again in 1903, the Curies were awarded the well-deserved Nobel Prize for Physics, sharing this accolade with Henri Becquerel. Marie made history as the first woman to ever win a Nobel Prize, and the Curies as a couple were the first spouses to win a prize together. Pierre was originally going to be the sole winner of the prize alongside Becquerel, but he refused this unless Marie was also allowed a share, demonstrating his integrity and support for his wife, whom he loved dearly. Shortly after this, on the 6th of December 1904, the Curies welcomed their second daughter, Eve. Shortly after these achievements, Pierre passed away suddenly in a tragic street accident in Paris in 1906, when his skull was brutally crushed by the wheel of a horse-drawn carriage after he slipped. In spite of her loss, Marie persisted in her work and raised her children notably, and took Pierre's position as Professor of General Physics. In 1911, Marie won a second Nobel Prize, being the only woman to ever win a second Nobel Prize, and the second person to win a prize in 2 fields, for her previous work in the discovery of radium and polonium, but this time the award was in chemistry as opposed to physics. Marie never remarried after losing Pierre and lived alone, remaining in Paris until moving to Passy after her retirement. Marie Curie passed away on the 4th of July 1934 at the age of 66, the cause of which is believed to have been due to her long-term exposure to radium, which caused a condition called aplastic pernicious anemia. Pierre is believed to have suffered a similar fate, as he strapped a piece of radium to his arm for 52 days, which caused a large grey scar to form on his skin, which was permanent. A fact about Marie Curie that some may not know is that she was actually buried twice, first alongside Pierre and then again in the National Museum of France over 60 years later. Even now, the work of the Curies is still discussed and has acted as a fundamental concept in modern chemistry and physics. Marie is remembered in particular and is celebrated as something of a feminist icon. The couple's two daughters, Irene and Eve, were both highly successful. Irene followed in the footsteps of her parents and studied physics. Like her parents, she too won a Nobel Prize in Chemistry a year after her mother's passing in 1935. She won the prize with her husband Frédéric Joliot Curie, making them the second married couple to win a Nobel Prize together. The couple had 2 children. Irene passed away in 1956, and this was due to leukemia induced by exposure to radiation. Her sister Eve was an equally successful writer, journalist, and pianist based in the United States. She married in 1954 America's ambassador in Greece, Henry Richardson Labouisse, I'm not sure, Jr. Eve did not have any children with Labouisse, although she became stepmother to his daughter, Anne Peretz. Curie passed away on the 22nd of October 2007 at the extraordinary age of 102, showing that the curse of radiation did not affect her. The Curie family's ties to science still persist, with Pierre and Marie's grandchildren and great-grandchildren having jobs in fields like nuclear and astrophysics. And thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to leave a like and subscribe just to increase engagement, and join me again next month for another episode of the Sidekicks of Science.